Hello students, welcome to IAS by Heart. Welcome to the Prelims High series. This is the third current affairs class. If you haven't watched our first two classes, kindly check the link in the description box below. In this current affairs class, we'll be dealing with last 1 year's current affairs from June 2019. Let's look at the blueprint of what we'll be dealing today. These are the 10 various subjects that we'll be looking today. In polity, we'll be looking at the Arms Amendment Act 2019, CSR in economy, Global Migration Report in IR, an integrated air defense weapon system in internal security subject, Earth Overshoot Day, Ramanujan mission, what are the three various types of ODF status that can be given to a state, what are the cultural festivals that were predominantly found in the news for the last 1 year, and various schemes. And this time we'll be looking at the liberalized remittance scheme and the recent one, PM CARES Fund. Without further ado, let's get into the video. The first question is from Polity, and this is about the Arms Amendment Act 2019. The first statement says, this seeks to amend the Arms Act of 1959, and the act reduces the number of permitted firearms from 3 to 1. This provides a time period of 1 year to deposit the excess firearms to the nearest police station, and the last statement says the validity or the license that's given to any firearm, it's increased from 3 to 5 years. This is a factual question. Unless until you have seen what the act is, you cannot answer this question. The correct answer is all of the statements are correct. This act got the presidential assent in December 2019. Another info, in India alone there are 35 lakh people who hold a firearm license for their personal safety. The maximum number of firearms is in Uttar Pradesh. Let's get into the explanation part. Recently, the Parliament passed Arms Amendment Act 2019. This Amendment Act seeks to amend the Arms Act of 1959. What are the provisions? The provision includes the number of permitted firearms has been reduced from 3 to 1. Now, a person can only one licensed firearm. And this provides a time period of 1 year to deposit the excess firearms. And if this 1 year is over, then the excess firearms will be delicensed automatically. Okay, the next one, the duration and the validity of the firearm license is increased from 3 years to 5 years. Remember, the number of firearms has been reduced, whereas the license validity has been increased to 5 years, increasing it from 3 years. Moving on, this bans manufacture, sale, use, transfer, conversion, testing and proofing of firearms without license. That means unlicensed firearms are banned. It additionally prohibits obtaining or procuring of unlicensed firearms and the conversion of one category of firearm to another. This act provides a special status to sportsperson because they might need firearms and ammunition for practice like in shooting and other sports. The government may make rules to track the firearms and ammunition. This is mainly aimed at reducing the misuse of firearms and the firearm related crimes. Moving on, this amends the punishment in relation to several offences. For example, previously the punishment was 7 years. This act amended it to minimum of 14 years punishment up to life imprisonment. So the severity has been increased, and it also adds new offences like forcefully taking a firearm from a police. This crime is punishable for imprisonment between 10 years and life imprisonment along with a fine. Using of firearms in a celebratory gunfire. As we have seen in news, there has been many deaths related to this celebratory gunfire which endangers human life and personal safety with an imprisonment of up to 2 years or fine up to 1 lakh. It also defines offences committed by organized crime group and illicit trafficking. This will attract an imprisonment of 10 years or lifelong imprisonment along with a fine. As I said before, the aim is to reduce the usage of firearms and reduce the firearm related crimes like procuring illicit firearms, etc. One of the concern in this act is raised by the Rajputs who have more than one firearm because it is like an heirloom. This act bans that a person can have only one firearm and not more than that. So this has become a concern among certain group of people. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Economy. Consider the following statements about corporate social responsibility. We have been seeing this word in news for a long time. Let's look at the statements. Presidential assent was given to Companies Amendment Act 2019 to provide specific penal provision in case of non-compliance of CSR rules. This was the latest news. And the Companies Act of 2019 is a landmark legislation that made India the first country to mandate and quantify CSR expenditure. Let's see if both these statements are true. Both the statements are true. Let's look at the explanation. Companies Amendment Act 2019 recently got the President's assent. The main aim is to introduce stringent provisions in case of non-compliance. What is CSR? This is the concept that suggests the corporations that are operating within the society has to contribute towards the society in various factors like economic, social, environmental development, etc. Inclusion of CSR is an attempt by the government to make business contribute to the national development. India is the only country in which CSR is legally mandated. It is prevalent in many countries, but it is not legally enforced. India is the only country in which it is legally enforced. The Companies Act of 2013 is a landmark judgment that made India the first country to mandate and quantify CSR expenditure. This makes the statement 2 as the correct option. Moving on, this mandates that every company, private or public limited, which has a net worth of 500 crores or a turnover of 1000 crore or a profit of 5 crore, their CSR spending has to be at least 2% of its average net profit for the 3 financial years, meaning it has to spend at least 2% of its net profit from the last 3 years as the CSR spending. This is another prelims type one-liner question. Injetti Srinivas committee. This committee was organized to form a report on corporate social responsibility status in India. This was formed in 2018 and recently it submitted its report. First, let's look at the report and then we'll look at what are the important provisions in this Amendment Act. Now, let's look at the findings of this high-level committee headed by Injetti Srinivas. One more thing is, he was the Corporate Affairs Secretary when this committee was organized in 2018. So, let's find out the major findings. The total CSR expenditure increased to 44%. But thereafter it declined in 2016 to 17 and it further dipped in the year 2017 to 18. And then the committee also found that the compliance percentage, meaning people who are following this CSR rules, it actually decreased from 72% to 57%. That is a very big dip in the compliance percentage. And out of the total expenditure in CSR activities, these activities can include various developmental activities, but the major projects were related to education, health and rural development. Moving on, the CSR funds can be contributed to National Relief Fund, Swachh Bharat Kosh and Clean Ganga Fund. But the problem is the contribution made to these funds were very small in proportion. Only almost 5% were made in this regard. The major share of the total CSR fund is getting distributed in only few states. This is mainly due to the location of the companies. This will contribute to uneven growth between the states. For example, in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Delhi received almost 40% of the total expenditure of all the companies in India. This is the lion's share. This 40% is enjoyed only by these 5 states and Delhi. Whereas states like Jharkhand, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Uttar Pradesh receive only 9%. The even more bad thing is northeastern region received only minuscule proportion of this total CSR expenditure. These are some of the observations of this committee. Let's look at the major highlights of the Amendment Act. This act mandates that the company should transfer the unspent CSR money in a financial year to an escrow account for 3 years, after which any unspent money will be transferred to a government fund. This is to make sure that the CSR money is not misused by the companies. And this also provides more teeth to the central government with violators and reducing burden on special courts. meaning the government will have more say rather than the special courts. This makes it mandatory that companies should have physical address. This move is aimed at reducing the shell companies. Shell companies usually have just a postal address or just one thing. This move is aimed to reduce the shell companies' play in Indian economy. Moving on, this act aims for declogging the national company law tribunals. NCLTs is where companies approach if they have any problem in the routine matters. And now this is transferred to the central government. Moving on, the act also recognizes 16 offences such as failure to file returns, issuance of share at a discount rate, civil defaults, etc. These offences are also recognized in this act. And the government can also levy penalties. These were the major highlights of the Companies Act of 2013. Moving on to the next question, which is from International Relations. Which of the following agencies published the Global Migration Report in 2020? ILO, World Bank, International Organization for Migration, UNDP. Let's look at the correct answer. It is International Organization for Migration. Let's see what the report says. As we have seen, Global Migration Report 2020 by International Organization for Migration. The number of migrants in 2019 are estimated to about 270 million. And almost more than half of this international migrants live in Europe and North America, especially United States. This is the top destination for migrants. The major reason for migration is work related. Though these are not from prelims perspective useful, I'm just letting you know what is in this report so that you can remember it more correctly. And 52% of the migrants were male. Moving on, the origin countries where these migrants originate, it is the top position is held by India, which is the largest country of origin, which is followed by Mexico, second place, and China, the third place. Origin of migrants is India. The top destination is Europe and North America, especially North America, US. And remittances which these migrants get, it is increased to 689 billion. The top remittance recipients were India, followed by China, and then Mexico. With regarding to migration, these are the three countries that you have to remember: India, Mexico, and China. United States remain the top remittance sending country, which is followed by UAE and Saudi Arabia. US has topped this position. These are the remittance sending countries. These are the findings of the report. Now let's look at what is International Organization for Migration. This is an intergovernmental organization, provides service and advice concerning to migration to governments and to migrants also. This was established in 1951 itself, and only in 2016 this became a related organization to United Nations. This is headquartered in Geneva, which is in Switzerland, and it has 173 members and observers also. India is a member country. That's all with related to International Organization of Migration. Moving on to the next question, which is from Internal Security. Consider the following statement about Integrated Air Defense Weapon System. This was in news because IADWS was installed in Delhi recently. This is called as National Advanced Surface to Air Missile System, which is developed by Russia. IADWS provides an integrated air missile defense. Let's see which of this statement is correct. Only second statement is correct because this defense weapon system we bought it from US, not from Russia. Let's look at the explanation. US approved the sale of integrated air defense weapon system for an estimated cost of $1.9 billion. Since this is a bigger budget, this occupied the news for quite some time. What is this integrated air defense weapon system? This is actually a family of weapons. This includes various systems like launchers, targeting and guidance systems, medium range air-to-air missiles, Stinger missiles, sentinel radars, fire distribution centers, control units, etc. So this IADWS is a family. This is not just one thing. This is an upgraded version of NASAMS which is developed by US firm. So as we have seen, what is this advanced medium range air-to-air missile? This is an beyond visual range, BVRAM, beyond visual range air-to-air missile. This is capable of all weather, day and night operation. And this is manufactured by a Raytheon, which is a US firm. In more than 30 countries are using this advanced medium range air-to-air missile. What is a Stinger missile? This is a shoulder-fired man-portable air defense system. This meaning it is easily portable by any human, and this is a fire and forget lightweight weapon system. And the important thing is it has a reusable launcher. Mainly Stinger missiles are an extremely effective weapon for shooting down aircrafts. So these are air defense systems. Let's see what is this multi-layered air defense shield which is proposed in Delhi. Why is this proposed in Delhi? As you can guess, Delhi is the seat of military, political and even nuclear head. That's why this becomes very important. Let's see. There are 5 layers. Each layer has a weapon which does a specific thing. Let's see. The innermost layer of protection will be the recent one, NASAM-2, which we got from US. The next layer is dominated by Akash. This Akash is a indigenous this is indigenous one. This has a range of 25 km. And then the next layer is dominated by Barak. India develops this missile in coordination with Israel. The next layer is S-400 systems, and the outermost layer will be provided by the ballistic missile defense system. This is developed by DRDO and this is also indigenous. So the 4th layer will be S-400. This will be ballistic missile defense. This is what given here. The outermost is ballistic missile defense, which is followed by S-400, then the Akash, then the NASAMS layer, and between this S-400 and Akash is Barak layer. These are the important points. Kindly pause the video and have a look at the important points in each of this. Moving on to the next question. This question is from Environment. Earth Overshoot Day is calculated by, the options are UNEP, Earth Day Network, Global Footprint Network, IPCC. The correct answer is Global Footprint Network, because Earth Day Network calculates Earth Day, which is different from the question, which is Earth Overshoot Day. Earth Day is just to create awareness about various environmental protection and how to conserve Earth, etc. Earth Overshoot Day is a whole different concept. Let's look at the explanation. Earth Overshoot Day this year fell on 29 July. This day marks the date when humans' demand for ecological resources and services in a given year exceeds what Earth can regenerate. Meaning, human consumption exceeds the ability of Earth to regenerate. That's the meaning. And this day fall on 29 July. This is calculated by, as we have seen, Global Footprint Network, and the partner is Worldwide Fund for Nature. This is the world's largest conservation organization. So we can say Earth Overshoot Day is calculated by Global Footprint Network and Worldwide Fund for Nature. Let's move on. Earth Overshoot Day is computed by Global Footprint Network by dividing the planet's biocapacity. Biocapacity meaning the amount of ecological resources Earth is able to generate. That is what is called as biocapacity, and divided by ecological footprint, that is the human's demand or what is the consumption level, that is called as ecological footprint, multiplying by 365, the number of days in a year. And here is the formula. Earth Overshoot Day is the planet's biocapacity and divided by humanity's ecological footprint into 365. This is the formula. this calculating this overshoot day will give us an idea in how a faster pace we are consuming the resources of the earth. Let's look at more detail about this. Earth has overshot its budget. What does that mean? Humanity has used up this year's elements of natural resources by July 29 itself. This is the earliest in 2 decades. In 1993 it fell on October 21, whereas in 2003 it fell on September. In 2017 it fell on August 2nd. In 2019 it fell on July. As you can see, we are consuming the resources in a very faster pace. If this goes on, we will need 1.75 planets, meaning we need another Earth to satisfy our greed. As you know, famous Gandhian quote, it says, we have everything for everyone's need, but we don't have everything for everyone's greed. This is becoming true these days. What are the various consequences? The major consequence is this: increased carbon dioxide emission. And this is also a reason and a consequence. Various other reasons are deforestation, soil erosion, biodiversity loss, building up of carbon dioxide. The problem is we have got only one Earth, and this is ultimately for human existence. So this calculation of 1.75 years, this is just for calculation purpose. We don't have another habitable planet in our solar system. Moving on. What is Global Footprint Network? This is an international non-profit organization. This was founded only in the year 2003. The key strategy is to calculate the ecological footprint data. That is to compare humans' demand on nature against nature's capacity to regenerate. So this is demand versus what is available in the nature, supply. Demand is exceeding, whereas supply is reducing. That's the contrary situation now. Let's go to the next question. This question is from Science and Technology. Scientists of which country have developed a concept and has named it as a Ramanujan machine? As you know, Srinivasa Ramanujan is a famous mathematician, Indian mathematician. US, Canada, Israel, France. Which country developed this concept? The answer is Israel. Let's see what this is. Israel's Institute of Technology. This is one of the leading R&D development centers in the world. They have developed a concept, though it is named as a machine. This is actually more of a concept, and it is named after renowned Indian mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan. This machine is more of a concept than an actual machine. The purpose is to come up with conjunctures that human can analyze. What does this conjunctures mean? They are mathematical statements that are not yet unproven. Unproven statements are called as conjunctures. Typically, people provide the input and the algorithm find the solution. But this machine reverses the process, meaning if you give pi is fed into the machine, it will give various statements in which the value of pi will be true. It will generate series whose value would lead to the pi value. This machine is created in the hope that the idea will inspire future generations or mathematicians. Let's know more about Srinivasa Ramanujan. December 22nd, which is his birthday, is celebrated as National Mathematics Day. He discovered the Ramanujan number. Remember this number, 1729. Why is this very special? Because this is the smaller number which can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. That is 1 cube and 12 cube. 12 cube is 1728 plus 1. 9 cube is 729 and 10 cube is 1000. So this is the smaller number which can be expressed as sum of two cubes in two different ways. He discovered this number, hence it is called as Ramanujan number. He made various other contributions in analytical theory of numbers and worked on elliptical functions, fractions, infinite series, etc. Let's go to the next question. This is from Social Issues chapter. You have to know about ODF plus and ODF plus plus to answer this question. For example, ODF plus protocol says a city, ward or work circle would be declared ODF when fecal, sludge and sewage is safely managed, treated with no discharging and or dumping of untreated fecal septage or sewage in drains, water bodies, etc. Next statement, ODF++ protocol. What does it say? That a city can be declared ODF++ when at any point of the day not a single person is found defecating or urinating in the open and all community and public toilets are functional and well maintained. You have to know what is the condition for a city to be declared ODF plus or ODF++. The answer, they are asking which of the statements is correct. The answer is none of the above because the statements are interchanged. Let's look at the explanation. Swachh Bharat Mission, which was launched in 2014, the major aim was open defecation free status in all urban local bodies. Phase 1 is over. 99% of the cities became ODF in 2019 of December, and then ODF plus and Swachh Bharat Mission ODF++ protocols are geared. This aims to address the entire sanitation value chain, meaning from treating the sewage to reusing the water. From treating to reusing. This is the next stage in Swachh Bharat Mission. Let's know more about this. What is ODF? ODF plus and ODF++. As you can see, this is the difference. This says a city can be declared as ODF when not a single person is found defecating in the open. This is the minimum criteria. In ODF plus, we say not a single person is found defecating in the open and all toilets should be functional and well maintained. This is stage 2. This is stage 1. And the next stage is all the sewage is safely managed and treated with no discharging, dumping of untreated sewage in drains, water bodies, open areas, etc. That is, there should not be any sewage pollution. This is stage 3. We have to achieve Swachh Bharat Mission in all the 3 stages. And here ODF focuses only on toilets. ODF plus focus on water, maintenance and hygiene. Here the focus area even broadens. It moves to sludge and septage management. So when can a city declare ODF plus and ODF++? A city that has been certified as ODF at least once on the basis of ODF protocols are eligible to declare, provided it has to meet the conditions. It can be declared itself as ODF plus or ODF++. After implementing this, the waste processing has gone up to more than 3 times. That is up to 60%. Now the waste processing is done. Also, the work on the 3 protocols in the next phase will be, that is Swachh Bharat Mission Urban 2, second phase. That will be ODF plus and water plus. What is this water plus? This was announced in 2019. The aim is to treating and reusing of waters. So as we have seen the stage by stage progress, the first stage is nobody should be defecating in the open. Second stage is all the toilets should be functional and well maintained. The third stage is wastage treatment, and the fourth stage is treatment and reusing of the wastewater. Moving on, this question is from art and culture. Match the following festival and the state. This is completely factual unless until you know all these festivals, or at least 2 or 3 festivals, you cannot come to an answer. Nuwaki festival is celebrated in Odisha. Zo Kutpi festival is celebrated in Mizoram. Karchi Puja is a festival of state Tripura. Lai Hararoba is of Manipur. This is the answer. Let's look at these festivals because they have been in the news in the last 1 year. Nuwaki, this is a harvesting festival of Odisha. This is that festival. Here, cutting of new crops and offering them to Mother Goddess is followed. This is also called as Nuwaki Parab or Nuwaki Bedgat. The next one, Zo Kutpui festival. This is a Mizoram festival organized by the government. Aim is to globally unify the Mizo tribes. Every festival will have one aim or one practice. Let's look at this. For example, in Nuwaki, this is a harvesting festival. Zo Kutpui festival aim is to globally unify the Mizo tribes. This is the first festival and it would be held at a local place called as Wangmoon, which is neighboring to Tripura. This event aims at reunifying and strengthening the brotherhood among different tribes of Mizo. This is the Zo Kutpui festival. Next one, Karchi Puja, this is the festival of Tripura. This is meant to cleanse the sins of mortal souls. This is the major aim of this festival. This was originally a Hindu tribal's festivity. Now it is celebrated by all communities. This is the Karchi Puja festival. This festival, the main feature is it has 14 deities. As you can see, these are the small deities. There are 14 deities in this Karchi Puja festival. The theme of this year festival is Nesha Mukta Tripura and Save Water. This was an important aim of this festival. Moving on, Lai Hararoba. This is a 5-day long ritualistic festival observed by Manipuri, especially the Meitei community. As you know, Meitei communities are predominantly found in Manipur. This Lai Hararoba meaning the festivity of gods or merry making of gods. The main aim is to celebrate the creation of the universe and recollection of the evolution of plants, animals and human beings. This is the Lai Hararoba festival, and this is main aim is to honor the Umang Lai deity. This is the Umang Lai deity as you can see in these pictures. During this festival, men and women dance in front of the idols of gods and also perform dance drama. I think that's what they are trying to do in this picture. So Lai Hararoba, this is from Manipur. If you can just remember few festivals which have been in news, you can easily attend this kind of question from art and culture. For example, I have provided a few festivals which are very significant. Ambubachi Mela, this is a very important festival and it has high probability of appearing in the question paper. This is celebrated in the state of Assam. This is the annual festival predominantly found in the Kamkeya temple on the banks of Brahmaputra river. This is one of the 51 Shakti shrines. The main thing is in this festival, the Devi Kamkeya, which is the goddess of fertility, is believed to undergo annual cycle of menstruation. This festival celebrates that event. And these are various other festivals like Mila Kir Bhavani, Ladakh Singhi Kaba Sindhu Festival, Chamlayal Mela. These are from Jammu Kashmir. All these three is from Jammu Kashmir, and these are the important things. These are some of the important festivals. You can have a look at it. Now moving on to the government schemes part. India witnessed highest ever monthly outflow 1.69 billion under liberalized remittance scheme. In this context, consider the following statement. Statement 1 says all resident individuals including minors are allowed to remit up to $250,000 in 1 year. The next statement says there are no restrictions on the frequency of remittances. Though these statements sound far-fetched, actually both the statements are true. Let's know more about this liberalized remittance schemes. The main aim of this scheme is to remit money across the border without seeking specific approvals. This remittance scheme is RBI's, and it says all resident individuals, including minors, are allowed to remit up to $250,000. They can do this for various reasons, like for employment, studying overseas, emigration. You can send it to relatives, medical treatment among others, etc. These are the major reasons, and you don't have to seek any special permission or approvals. Here the residents also can transfer money for capital accounts. These are current account transactions. For studying overseas, employment, emigration, etc. They can even transfer for capital account transactions, which include opening a foreign currency account overseas with another overseas bank, purchase of property, making investment in units of mutual funds, venture capital funds, etc. This remittance scheme was introduced in 2004, and there are no restrictions on the frequency of remittances. Like for example, there was restriction like you can withdraw only 5 times from ATM, right? Like that, there is no restriction on the frequency of remittances. But the problem is this is not available to corporates, partnership firms, HUF trusts, etc. This is available only for individuals, and under this people cannot send money to countries identified as non-cooperative by FATF. The main aim is to reduce terror financing and to entities identified as posing terrorist risks. Obviously this is not allowed. Liberalized remittance scheme restricts buying and selling of foreign exchange abroad, lottery purchases or sweepstakes, proscribe which is not allowed, magazines or any items that is restricted under foreign exchange management rules. Other than that, even minors are allowed to remit to foreign countries up to $250,000. Moving on, the last question of this session, we have been seeing PM CARES Fund in news recently amid this COVID pandemic. Let's consider these statements. It was formed in 2020 amid COVID outbreak. It's true. It consists entirely of voluntary contributions from individuals or organization, and it does not have any budgetary support. Let's see if this is true. Next one, it is exempted under foreign contribution regulations so that it can accept donations and contribution from individuals and organization based in foreign countries. Obviously this has to be true. Let's look at the answer. The answer is all of this statements is true. Moving on to the explanation. This PM CARES Fund, this was formed in 2020 amidst COVID-19 outbreak only. The main objective is to undertake and support relief or assistance, mainly due to public health emergency or any other kind of emergency, calamity or even distress that is both man-made or natural. Then this fund also provides creation or upgradation of healthcare or pharmaceutical facilities like buying of PPE equipments and other things, other necessary infrastructure, funding relevant research or any other type of support. This is the major objective of this fund. This fund also provides financial assistance and it can also provide grants, payments, etc. Moving on, let's look at the administrative mechanism of this. Prime Minister is the ex officio chairman of the PM CARES Fund, obviously, and Minister of Defence, Home Affairs and Minister of Finance. They are the ex officio trustees of the fund. The chairperson of the board of trustees is also Prime Minister, and he shall have the power to nominate 3 trustees who shall be eminent person in the field of research, health, science, social work, etc. and even in the fields of public administration and philanthropy. Moving on, what are the contributions that consist of this fund? This is made entirely of voluntary contribution from individuals, organizations, etc. and it does not get any budgetary support. This fund, PM CARES Fund, is made up of only voluntary contributions, and this is exempted under foreign contribution rules. Therefore, it can accept donations and contributions from individuals and organizations based in foreign countries. And if someone donates to this fund, they can avail 100% exemption under Income Tax Act. And if companies donate to it, they can also count this donation into CSR expenditure. How is this fund audited? This fund will be audited by independent auditors who will be appointed by the trustees. As we have seen, the chairman is PM and it can have 3 ministers, ex officio trustees and 3 eminent persons. That's all for today's class, students. I hope this was informative and useful. Kindly follow the Prelims High series to keep yourself updated and let us help you to crack Prelims 2020. Thank you.